titled, "My siblings always barred me from their weddings, so I gave them a taste of their own medicine, locked out in heels." The first thing I noticed wasn't the music. It was the way the security guard looked at me, like I was a mistake somebody forgot to erase. I stood under the warm glow of chandelier lights spilling out from the glass doors of the marigold loft, my hands tight around the white gift bag with the gold bow. My heels were already hurting, and I'd only been standing there for 30 seconds. I could hear laughter inside. I could smell perfume, champagne, and expensive cologne. My brother Marcus Jackson was getting married, and I was outside like a stranger. "Name?" the guard asked, eyes flicking down to a tablet. "Arielle Jackson," I said, forcing a smile that felt like it might crack my face. He tapped, scrolled, tapped again. Then his eyebrows pulled together. "I'm not seeing you." I blinked once, then laughed, like it was a tiny glitch we could fix with a second look. "You might have missed it. Try JAC." He held up one finger like I was interrupting something important. Then he stepped to the side, blocking the doorway more fully. "Ma'am, you're not on the list." The words hit soft at first, like a feather. Then the humiliation hit hard, like somebody poured ice water down my spine. I looked past him through the glass. The ballroom was bright, packed, alive. People in satin and suits moved like they belonged there. A photographer lifted his camera to catch a group shot near the floral arch. And right there, near the front, was Marcus, my brother, perfect tux, perfect smile, laughing like nothing in this world had ever hurt him. I raised my hand and waved, small and unsure, like a kid trying not to cry in public. Marcus didn't look, or maybe he did, and chose not to. I pulled out my phone with fingers that suddenly felt too big for my own hands. I called him once, straight to voicemail. I called again, voicemail. Then I texted, "Hey, I'm at the door. They can't find my name." I stared at the screen like staring could make him reply faster. Nothing. Behind Marcus, I spotted my sister Danielle near the bridesmaids. Hair laid perfectly, makeup flawless, smile sharp like a blade. She turned slightly, and for a second, her eyes landed on the glass. On me. We made eye contact, and I felt a flicker of hope, like maybe she'd rush over, laugh, tell the guard it was a misunderstanding. But Danielle's expression didn't soften. It tightened. Then she looked away, like I was a stain she didn't want on her picture. My throat closed up. I swallowed hard and tried again, this time calling my mother. She answered on the third ring, voice low and rushed, like she was hiding in a bathroom stall. "Arielle," she said. "What is it?" "I'm outside," I whispered. "They're saying I'm not on the list." Silence, not shock, not confusion. Silence, like she'd been expecting this. Then she exhaled slowly and said the words that broke something in me. "Baby, please don't do this right now." My eyes stung. "Don't do what? Stand at my own brother's wedding?" "Arielle," she hissed. "People are watching. Please, not today." That's when I understood. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't a mix-up at the door. This was a decision. The guard shifted his weight, uncomfortable. His eyes darted around like he wanted to disappear. And then he leaned closer, voice dropping to a quiet apology. "Ma'am," he said softly, "they told us to be strict. They said, you might cause a scene." I felt my stomach turn. "Cause a scene?" I was standing there in a clean dress, holding a gift bag, begging my own family to let me exist in the same room as them, and somehow I was still the problem. Behind me, two women walked up, glanced at me, then the guard, then whispered to each other as they passed inside like I was invisible. I stood there frozen, like my body didn't know what to do with rejection this loud. Then I looked down at the gift bag in my hand. I'd bought Marcus a custom watch, engraved, something meaningful, something that said, "I'm proud of you." My fingers loosened. The bag slipped from my grip. It landed on the ground with a small, pathetic thud. That sound, small, quiet, forgotten, felt like my entire life in this family. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't bang on the door like a movie scene. I just turned around and walked away, heels clicking like a countdown. And right as I reached the curb, my phone vibrated again, a text from my mother. "Please don't embarrass us." I stared at it. Then I whispered to myself, so low even I barely heard it. "You've embarrassed me my whole life." And this time, I wasn't going to beg my way back in. I opened the family group chat, only to see Marcus posting photos from inside the wedding like I never existed, erased in real time. That was the strange part. I kicked off my heels by the door and stood there in silence, still wearing the dress I had bought for a wedding I wasn't allowed to attend. The apartment felt too quiet, like it was waiting for me to break down, but nothing came. Instead, I sat on the edge of my couch and opened my phone. That's when the real damage started. The family group chat was buzzing, messages stacked on top of each other like nothing had happened. Marcus had posted first, a photo of him and his bride under the floral arch, both of them glowing, smiling wide, arms wrapped tight. Marcus, best day of my life, grateful for family and love. Family. I stared at the word until it blurred. Then Danielle posted the video, slow motion, dramatic, champagne glasses clinking. Danielle, we did it. Couldn't have asked for a more perfect day. I scrolled. More photos, more laughter, more captions about unity, loyalty, blessings. It felt unreal, like I'd stepped into a parallel world where I didn't exist. I typed a message, deleted it, typed again, deleted that too. My chest felt tight, like every breath was too shallow. Finally I sent it. Me, why wasn't I invited? 3 dots appeared almost immediately. Then it disappeared. Then it appeared again. Danielle replied, "Danielle, Arielle, not everything is about you." I blinked. My hands started to shake. Before I could respond, Marcus chimed in. "Marcus, you know how stressful weddings are. We didn't need distractions." Distractions. That's what I am now. Not a sister, not family, a problem to manage. I stared at the screen, waiting for someone, anyone to say, "This isn't right." No one did. Instead, my phone buzzed again. A private message from my cousin Janelle. "Don't reply in the group chat," she wrote. "They're already talking about you." My heart dropped. "Talking how?" I typed. She hesitated, then sent a screenshot. It was a separate group chat, one I wasn't in. The title at the top made my stomach twist. Wedding Damage Control. Under it were messages from Marcus, Danielle, even my mother. Marcus had written, "She showed up anyway." Danielle replied, "I told you she would." Then the line that made my chest cave in. "She always tries to center herself. This is why we didn't invite her." I felt like I'd been punched without warning. I scrolled further. Someone asked, "Is she making a scene?" Danielle answered, "Not yet. Security handled it." Handled it. Like I was a spill on the floor. Like I was something embarrassing that needed to be cleaned up before guests noticed. My vision blurred, but I still didn't cry. I couldn't. It was like my body didn't trust tears anymore. I exited the chat and locked my phone, pressing it face down on the table like it had betrayed me. That's when the realization hit, slow and heavy. This wasn't about one wedding. This wasn't even about Marcus. This was about control. They didn't just leave me out. They planned to. They anticipated my reaction. They prepared for me like I was a problem they'd already solved. And the worst part? They were calm about it. No guilt, no hesitation, just execution. I stood up and walked to the bathroom mirror. The woman staring back at me looked composed. Too composed. Mascara is still perfect, hair still laid, lips still glossed. I looked like someone who belonged inside that ballroom. I pressed my palm against the mirror and whispered, "What did I ever do to deserve this?" The answer came quietly. Nothing, and that scared me more than anything. Because if I did nothing wrong, then they did this on purpose. My phone buzzed again. A new message, this time from my mother. I hesitated before opening it. Then I read, "Please don't talk to anyone tonight. Let's not make this bigger than it needs to be." I laughed, not because it was funny, because it was familiar. That's when something inside me shifted. Not anger, not revenge. Clarity. I typed one final message to myself in my notes app. This wasn't the first time, and it won't be the last, unless I change something. I didn't know what the change looked like yet, but I knew one thing for sure. They weren't just excluding me from weddings, they were erasing me from the family story, and if I didn't do something, they'd succeed. That night I started going through old messages and realized this wasn't the first wedding I was accidentally left out of. The pattern I couldn't unseen. I didn't sleep that night. I lay on my bed in the dark, still in my makeup, staring at the ceiling while the city hummed outside my window. Every few minutes my phone lit up with more wedding photos, more smiling faces, more proof that life went on just fine without me. At some point I stopped scrolling and started searching. I opened my messages, not the recent ones, the old ones. I typed one word into the search bar: wedding. The first result was from 3 years ago. My cousin Tasha's wedding. I tapped it. I remembered being excited back then. I'd even taken off work early, bought a dress, and booked a hotel. I'd been sitting on my couch when Danielle texted me. "Hey Ari, quick update. They're keeping it really intimate. Family only." I remembered replying, "But I'm family." Her response came hours later. "You know what I mean." At the time I swallowed it. I told myself it wasn't personal. I scrolled down. Another result, 5 years ago. Marcus's courthouse wedding to his first wife, the one that just happened suddenly. His text replayed in my head as I read it again. "We didn't think you'd want to come. It was last minute." I remembered finding out afterward, through Facebook. I kept scrolling. Another message, another excuse. Small venue. Too much stress. Let's celebrate later. Different years, same result. I set my phone down slowly, like it was fragile. And that's when it hit me. This wasn't a coincidence. This was strategy. Every major milestone in my siblings' lives had one thing in common. I wasn't there. Not in the photos, not in the videos, not in the memories they proudly displayed online. I sat up in bed, my heart pounding. Not from sadness anymore, but from realization. They didn't forget me. They filtered me out. I walked to my bookshelf and pulled down an old family album my mother once gave me for safekeeping. I hadn't opened it in years. I flipped through the pages. Birthday parties, graduations, family reunions. At first glance, everything looked normal. Then I noticed something strange. In photo after photo, I was either missing or standing at the edge, cut off, half out of frame. Sometimes replaced by a cousin, sometimes not there at all. My hands started to shake. I sat back down on the floor and laughed quietly, not because it was funny, but because the truth was so clear it almost hurt to breathe. They had been editing me out for years, not loudly, not aggressively, just enough that no one questioned it. I thought about all the times I'd blamed myself, all the times I'd wondered if I was too emotional, too sensitive, too much, and suddenly I saw it. I wasn't too much. It was inconvenient. I reminded them of things they didn't want to explain. I existed outside the version of the family they wanted to present. My phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't the group chat. It was an email notification. Subject line, estate follow-up. My stomach tightened. I opened it. It was from Mr. Reynolds, my late father's lawyer. The email was short. Too short. "Arielle, I've been meaning to reach out regarding your father's trust. There are some details we should discuss when you're available. Best, Thomas Reynolds." My breath caught. My father had been gone for 7 years. 7, and no one had ever mentioned the trust to me. I scrolled down. There was a forwarded chain beneath it, old, years old, and there it was. An email from Marcus. "Please hold off on contacting Arielle for now. We're handling things internally." My hands went cold. I stared at the screen, rereading that line until it burned. They didn't just exclude me socially, they excluded me strategically. Weddings weren't the cause, they were the cover. I closed my laptop slowly, sat there in the quiet, and for the first time since standing outside that wedding venue, my eyes finally filled with tears. Not because I felt small, but because I finally understood the game. They weren't protecting the family from me, they were protecting themselves from what I represented. And now that I saw the pattern, I couldn't unsee it. The next morning I met the one person who knew the truth years ago, and finally decided to tell me why my siblings really didn't want me there. The truth they never meant to say. The next morning, I didn't check my phone. That alone felt strange. For years I trained myself to stay available, just in case my family needed me, just in case I was finally included. But that day, I moved slowly, intentionally, like someone walking into a truth they couldn't turn back from. I met Naya at a small coffee shop across town. The kind with scratched wooden tables and music low enough to let you think. She was already there when I arrived, stirring the same cup over and over without drinking it. She looked nervous. That scared me more than anything. "You okay?" I asked, sitting across from her. She nodded quickly. Too quickly. "Yeah, I've been waiting for this conversation for a long time." I frowned. "Waiting for what?" She exhaled and finally looked me in the eyes. "For you to stop blaming yourself." I didn't answer. Naya leaned back, folded her arms, and said quietly, "They didn't keep you out because you're dramatic, Arielle." My chest tightened. "They kept you out because you don't fit the version of the family they want people to see." The words landed hard. I stared at the table. What version? Naya hesitated, then reached into her bag and pulled out her phone. "There's something I never told you," she said, "because I didn't think it was my place, but after last night, you deserve to hear it." She tapped her screen, then she slid the phone toward me. It was an audio file. I looked up at her. "What is this?" Nia swallowed. "A voice note Danielle sent me 2 years ago after Marcus's first wedding." My hands trembled as I picked up the phone. I pressed play. Danielle's voice filled the space between us, soft, annoyed, unmistakably hers. "I just wish Arielle understood that her presence changes the energy," she said. "People start asking questions about our dad, about the past, about things we've moved on from." I stopped breathing. The voice continued. "It's not that I hate her. She just doesn't fit the image we're building." My fingers went numb. I ended the recording and stared at the black screen like it might crack open and swallow me. Image. That word echoed in my head. "I didn't know you knew," I whispered. Nia shook her head. "I didn't understand it back then. I thought she was being shallow. But after every wedding you weren't invited to, I realized it was deliberate. I laughed once, short, broken. So I remind them of something," I said. "Something they don't want to explain?" Nia nodded. "You remind them of where they started and how complicated it was. I thought about my father, how he loved quietly, how his past wasn't neat or easy or Instagram ready, and how I carried that truth just by existing. That's why they call me a problem," I said slowly. "Not because I cause drama, but because I don't pretend." Nia reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "You're not the problem," she said. "You're the proof." The coffee shop felt too small suddenly. I stood up, my heart pounding, not from hurt, but from something sharper. Clarity. For the first time, I wasn't confused. I wasn't wondering what I did wrong. I knew exactly why they didn't want me there. And once you understand the reason someone fears your presence, you stop begging for their permission. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I looked at the screen. A new email from Thomas Reynolds, my father's lawyer. Subject line: urgent, trust access, and prior requests. I looked up at Nia. "They didn't just keep me out of weddings," I said quietly. "They were hiding something bigger." Nia's eyes widened. "Arielle, what are you about to find out?" I didn't answer. I opened the email and realized weddings were never the main issue. They were a distraction. The email revealed exactly what my siblings were protecting and why my absence mattered more than my presence ever had. Chapter 5. The thing they were protecting. I didn't open the email right away. I just stared at the subject line, my thumb hovering over the screen like it might burn me if I touched it. Outside the cafe window, cars passed, people laughed, life moved on like nothing in my world had just shifted, but mine had. Finally, I tapped it. The email wasn't dramatic. No bold letters. No warning language. Just facts. Arielle, your father established a discretionary family trust prior to his passing. Certain distributions were delayed at the request of listed executors, your siblings included. I believe it's time you're fully informed. My chest tightened. Executors. Plural. Meaning this wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a decision they made together. I scrolled down. The trust wasn't massive, but it wasn't small either. It covered property shares, investment accounts, and something else that made my stomach drop, a controlling vote in a family-held business my siblings had quietly been running for years. I looked up at Nia. They've been using something that doesn't fully belong to them, I said slowly. Nia's eyes widened. And you were never told? I shook my head. No. And the timing? I swallowed. Every wedding, every milestone. They made sure I wasn't close enough to ask questions. It clicked all at once. Weddings weren't just celebrations. They were power displays, photos, appearances, proof that the family was united. Without me. Because if I wasn't there, no one wondered why. I drove straight home after that. My hands tight on the steering wheel. Memories replayed differently now. Every time I was excluded, it wasn't to avoid drama. It was to avoid discovery. That night Marcus called me. I almost didn't answer. Almost. What's going on? He asked casually, like we'd spoken yesterday. I stayed quiet. Arielle? He pressed. Why is the lawyer suddenly emailing you? There it was. I laughed softly. So you knew. Silence. Then he sighed. Look, this isn't the time. For honesty, I cut in. Because you've had years. His tone hardened. You're blowing this out of proportion. No, I said calmly. You built an entire life on proportion. I was just excluded from it. He hung up. No goodbye. No explanation. Just a click. And in that quiet, something inside me settled. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even hurt anymore. I was alert. They hadn't just kept me out. They underestimated me, and for the first time, that worked in my favor. 2 days later, I received an invitation that made everything painfully ironic, because now they needed me. The invitation that changed everything. 2 days after Marcus hung up on me, my phone buzzed while I was folding laundry. I almost ignored it. That was new for me, this instinct to protect my peace instead of chasing answers. But when I glanced at the screen and saw the sender, my chest tightened anyway. Unknown number. I opened the message. Hi Arielle. This is Tanya, Marcus's wife. I hope it's okay that I'm reaching out. I sat down slowly on the edge of the bed. Tanya had never texted me before. In fact, we'd barely spoken at all. At the wedding, she'd smiled politely in my direction from across the room before the doors closed in my face. I typed back carefully. Hi, what's going on? The reply came almost immediately. I don't want to overstep, but there's an engagement party my parents are hosting next month. They've been looking for an event planner. Marcus mentioned you. I read it twice, then a third time. The irony hit so hard I actually laughed. They hadn't wanted me at the wedding, but now they needed me to make something look perfect. I didn't respond right away. I stood up, walked to the window, and stared out at the city. Cars moved in neat lines below, everyone heading somewhere with purpose. I wondered how many times I'd been used like this without realizing, kept close enough to be useful, far enough to stay quiet. My phone buzzed again. No pressure, Tanya added. I just thought you should hear it directly from me. I appreciated that at least, so I called her. She sounded nervous when she answered. Arielle, thank you for calling back. Why me? I asked gently. There are a lot of planners out there. She hesitated. Because you're good. and because I think things weren't handled right. That caught my attention, she continued. I didn't know you weren't invited until the day of the wedding. By then, everything was already in motion. I believed her. Her voice didn't carry guilt, it carried discomfort. I don't expect anything, she said quickly, but if you're open to it, my parents want to meet. I closed my eyes. This was it. The moment where I could say no, walk away, protect myself, or step into the room where the rules had always worked against me. I'll think about it, I said. After we hung up, I sat there in silence. Then I opened my laptop and pulled up the draft contract Tanya had emailed. And that's when I noticed the clause. Event planner retains full authority over guest access, seating coordination, and on-site security approval. I stared at the words, read them again. Slowly, for the first time in my life, I would be controlling the door. I signed the contract. Power feels different when it's quiet. The engagement party was held in a private event space overlooking the city. Floor-to-ceiling windows, soft lighting, the kind of place designed to impress without trying too hard. I arrived early, not as a guest, as the planner. The staff greeted me by name, security checked in with me, vendors waited for my instructions. Every decision passed through my hands before it became reality. It felt strange, not intoxicating, grounding. Marcus arrived an hour later. When he saw me standing near the entrance with a clipboard, his steps slowed. He looked confused, then annoyed, then briefly uncomfortable. "Arielle," he said, "what are you doing here?" I met his eyes calmly. "Working." He laughed like I was joking. "You're serious?" "Very." He glanced around, lowering his voice. "You could have told me." "You hung up on me," I replied evenly. His jaw tightened. "This isn't the time." "Then we're aligned," I said. "I'm here to do my job, nothing more." As guests began to arrive, I stayed near the door, checking names, coordinating security, ensuring everything flowed smoothly. Then it happened. A group of Marcus's friends showed up, loud, late, already acting like they owned the place. Security looked at me. "Names?" I asked. They rattled them off confidently. I scanned the list. They weren't there. "I'm sorry," I said calmly. "You're not cleared for entry." One of them laughed. "Man, call Marcus." Marcus was already walking toward us, irritation written all over his face. "What's the problem?" he demanded. I kept my voice level. "They're not on the approved list." He stared at me like he didn't recognize me. "You're really doing this?" I didn't smile. I didn't argue. I simply said, "These are the rules." For a second, I saw it. The flash of helplessness. The realization that access wasn't automatic anymore. Marcus exhaled sharply and waved them off. "It's fine. I'll deal with it." They left, muttering under their breath. The door closed behind them, and something inside me clicked. This is what it felt like. Not revenge, not cruelty, just structure, boundaries, the kind I was never given. Later that night, as the party glowed behind me, Marcus pulled me aside. "You're enjoying this," he said quietly. I met his gaze. "No, I understand." He frowned. "Understanding what?" "How easy it is," I said, "to decide who belongs when you're the one holding the list." His phone buzzed before he could respond. He glanced at it, then looked back at me, uneasy, because for the first time he realized something important. I wasn't asking to be let in anymore. When the story turned against me. By the next morning, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. At first, I ignored it. I told myself it was just leftover chatter from the engagement party, but when I finally picked it up, I realized something had shifted. The tone was different. The first message came from my aunt. "I heard things got a little tense last night. Are you okay?" I frowned. Then another message, this time from a cousin I hadn't spoken to in months. "Hey, I don't want to get in the middle, but people are saying you embarrassed Marcus." I sat up straighter. Embarrassed him? I opened the family group chat. It was active, very active. Danielle had posted first. I really wish Arielle wouldn't bring personal issues into family events. Personal issues. That phrase again. Marcus replied minutes later. I don't want drama. I just want peace. Peace. I stared at the screen, my stomach sinking. They weren't angry. They were rewriting. They were shaping a version of events where I wasn't firm or professional. I was unstable, difficult, vindictive. I scrolled slowly, watching relatives respond with polite concern. Let's all calm down. This family has been through enough. Arielle, maybe you should apologize. Apologize for enforcing rules they agreed to, for doing my job, for finally not shrinking. I closed the chat and set my phone down, my chest tight. This was familiar territory. Whenever I stopped absorbing discomfort quietly, the narrative flipped. I became the aggressor, the problem, the one who changed. I paced my living room, replaying the night before in my head. I hadn't raised my voice. I hadn't insulted anyone. I hadn't made a scene. I'd simply said no, and that was enough. My phone buzzed again. This time it was my mother calling. I hesitated. Then I answered. What's going on? She asked, not greeting me, not checking in. You tell me, I replied. She sighed. People are talking. They always are, I said quietly. You didn't have to humiliate your brother, she continued. I closed my eyes. I didn't humiliate him, I said. I followed the contract. You could have made an exception, she pressed. For him, I finished. She didn't deny it. That silence told me everything. You want peace, I said softly, but only if I pay for it. That's not fair, she snapped. No, I said. It's just honest. She hung up. I sat there, breathing slowly, letting the truth settle. This was the cost of boundaries, and I was paying it in full. That afternoon I received a message that changed the stakes completely, because it came from the last person I expected to hear from, the ally I never saw coming. The message came through as a simple text. Can we talk privately? It was from Tanya, Marcus's wife. I stared at the screen for a long moment before replying. Sure. We met later that evening at a quiet lounge downtown. Tanya arrived first, sitting rigidly at the bar, her hands wrapped tightly around a glass of water. She looked relieved when she saw me. Thank you for coming, she said. Of course, I replied, sliding into the seat beside her. She hesitated, then said, I owe you an apology. I turned toward her. For what? For not asking questions sooner, she said quietly, and for letting things happen without understanding them. I listened. She took a breath. Marcus was angry last night, not because of his friends, but because he lost control. I nodded. That happens. She glanced around to make sure no one was listening. There's something you should know, she continued. Marcus and Danielle have always been nervous about you. I raised an eyebrow. Nervous how? They think you were your father's favorite, she said carefully. I laughed once. That's ridiculous. Maybe, Tanya said. But perception matters to them more than truth. She leaned closer. They were afraid that if you were present at certain moments, weddings, announcements, celebrations, people would start asking questions. My chest tightened. What kind of questions? About the trust, she said. The word landed heavy between us. They've been using it, she went on, or parts of it, and they didn't want you close enough to realize what was happening. My fingers curled slowly against the bar. Why are you telling me this? I asked. Tanya swallowed. Because I married into this family, and I don't want to build my life on a lie. She looked at me directly. And because you're not the person they've been describing. I exhaled slowly. For the first time since this started, I didn't feel alone. But I also felt something else. Danger. Because once secrets start surfacing, nothing stays the same. Tanya reached into her bag and slid something toward me, a folded document. I copied this, she said softly, in case you ever needed it. I looked down, then back up at her. What is it? Proof, she said. My phone buzzed again. Another message, this time from Marcus. We need to talk, now. I looked at Tanya, then at the document, and finally at the message. I knew at that moment the family drama had crossed a line. This wasn't emotional anymore. It was legal, and power never gives itself up quietly. That night I had to decide whether I wanted peace or the truth, because I couldn't have both. Peace was the bargain. I didn't answer Marcus right away. His message sat on my phone like a warning, pretending to be concerned. We need to talk, now. I already knew the tone. Not curiosity, not care. Control. Marcus only reached out when something slipped out of his hands. I folded the document Tanya had given me carefully and slid it into my bag like it was fragile, not because it could tear, but because it carried the truth. Then I drove home in silence, my thoughts louder than the radio I never turned on. By the time I pulled into my driveway, Marcus had called twice. I let the phone ring. On the third call, I answered. "What are you doing?" he asked immediately, skipping hello. I leaned against my kitchen counter and stared at the wall. "I'm breathing," I said calmly. "You should try it." "This isn't funny," he snapped. "You're stirring things up." I closed my eyes. "You mean I stopped pretending?" "That's not what I said." "It's what you meant." He exhaled sharply, like I was exhausting him. "You don't understand the position you're putting us in." "Us." I noticed he didn't tell me. "Then explain it," I said. "All of it." Silence. Not confusion, calculation. Then his voice softened. "You've always wanted to be included," he said. "This is your chance to stop all this and be part of the family again." There it was. The deal. Peace. If I paid for it. "What does that require?" I asked quietly. "You stop asking questions," he said. "You let the lawyer situation cool off. You apologize in the group chat. We move forward." I laughed softly. Not mockery, recognition. "And the trust?" I asked. Another pause. "That's complicated." "No," I replied. "It's inconvenient." His voice dropped. "You don't want to do this." "Do what?" "Make enemies of your own family." I straightened. "You made me an enemy the day you decided I didn't belong." He snapped. "You're being dramatic." "No," I said evenly. "I'm being precise." He went quiet. "Then it gets colder. If you keep this up, don't expect support." Support. From people who locked me out of weddings and called it peace. I never had it, I said. I survived without it. The call ended abruptly. No goodbye, no closure, just a click. I stood there for a long moment, feeling the weight of my choice settle into my chest. I had chosen truth over comfort, and I knew comfort would never forgive me for that. The next morning my mother called, not to ask how I was, but to tell me how my silence was affecting everyone else, when silence became my crime. My mother called early, too early for concern, just right for pressure. I answered before I could overthink it. "Arielle," she said, voice tight, "we need to talk." I stayed quiet. "I've been getting calls," she continued. "People are worried." "About me?" I asked. She hesitated. "About the family." That told me everything. "When was the last time anyone worried about me?" I asked softly. She sighed, the same sigh she'd used my entire life when something felt inconvenient. "Your siblings are under a lot of stress," she said. "This situation isn't helping." I sat at my kitchen table, sunlight creeping across the floor like it didn't know my world was cracking. "When was I ever helping?" I asked. "Name one time my feelings mattered more than appearances." She didn't answer. Instead she said, "You're tearing the family apart." The words landed hard. "I didn't tear anything," I said quietly. "I just stopped holding it together by myself." "Why can't you let things be?" she asked. "Because letting things be always meant letting myself disappear." Her voice wavered. "You don't know how hard this is for me." I closed my eyes. "I know exactly how hard it is," I said. "You trained me for it." Silence stretched between us. Then she said something that cut deeper than anger ever could. You were always stronger than the others. I opened my eyes slowly. That's why we leaned on you, she continued. You could handle it. Handle it. The exclusion, the silence, the rewriting, because I was strong enough to survive it quietly. So I was chosen to suffer, I said, because I wouldn't break. That's not what I meant, she cried. It's what happened. She started crying then. Real tears. And part of me wanted to comfort her, like I always had. But another part of me was tired of being the family's emotional armor. I love you, she whispered, but you're making this worse. I'm making it honest, I replied. You'll regret this, she said softly. Maybe, but this time regret wouldn't belong to me alone. After the call ended, I sat in silence, not shaking, not crying, clear. Because now I understand. They weren't angry because I was wrong. They were angry because I wasn't bending anymore. My phone buzzed with the new email from the lawyer, subject line, formal disclosure, and next steps. I opened it without hesitation. The email confirmed everything, and once the truth was documented, it could no longer be buried. When the truth became paper, I read the email twice before I understood what it was really saying. Not because it was complicated, but because once you see the truth written down, clean, official, undeniable, it hits differently than whispers ever could. The lawyer didn't soften his language. He didn't dramatize it either. He just laid it out. My father's trust had been partially activated years ago. Certain assets, investments, property interests, and decision rights had been distributed under family consensus. My name appeared on the documents, but my signature didn't. Instead, there were approvals listed as executors acting in shared interest, Marcus, Danielle. They hadn't forged anything. They'd done something worse. They'd moved without me. Legally gray, morally clear. I sat at my kitchen table, paper spread out like a quiet accusation. The sunlight from the window didn't warm anything. It just made the ink sharper. This wasn't about money, not really. It was about voice. My father had given me one. They had taken it. I thought about all the times I'd been told to stay out of grown folk business, all the moments when decisions were already made before I even knew a conversation existed. They weren't protecting me, they were sidelining me. My phone buzzed, a text from Marcus. You're taking this too far. I didn't respond. Instead, I called the lawyer. He answered on the second ring. Arielle, he said gently, I was hoping you'd reach out. How long? I asked. How long is it? How long have they known? I said. That I was entitled to know. He paused. Longer than they're admitting. I exhaled slowly. What happens now? That depends on you, he replied. You can contest. You can negotiate. Or you can let it go. Let it go. Like it was a misunderstanding. Like it hadn't shaped my entire place in the family. If I contest, I asked, will it become public? Yes, he said, eventually. I closed my eyes. Public meant exposure, questions, awkward conversations at dinners and holidays. But silence meant something too. It meant accepting that I was optional. I'll call you back, I said. After I hung up, I sat there for a long time. I wasn't shaking. I wasn't angry. I felt steady, because now I know something important. They didn't exclude me because I was weak. They excluded me because I mattered, and that meant I had leverage they never expected me to use. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Danielle. We need to clear the air. I stared at her name on the screen. Then I typed back, we do. The next message I sent changed the balance completely, because for the first time I wasn't asking to be included. The invitation. I didn't beg for. I didn't meet Danielle in person, not yet. Instead, I sent one message, carefully worded, calm, unemotional. I'm getting married. The typing bubbles appeared almost immediately, then stopped. Then it appeared again. Finally, she replied, What? I smiled faintly. I hadn't announced it publicly yet. I hadn't posted photos. I hadn't told the extended family. But I wanted her to know first. Yes, I typed. Caleb and I are engaged. A pause, then. Why am I just hearing about this? I took my time before responding. I didn't want distractions. The irony wasn't accidental. Her reply came fast. That's not funny. I didn't respond to that. Instead, I sent another message. We're planning something small, intimate. There it was, her language, her rules. Minutes passed, then, of course we'd be there. Would you? I waited before replying again. I'll send the details soon. That was it. No argument, no explanation, just information. I put my phone down and leaned back on the couch, exhaling slowly. Caleb looked up from his laptop. You okay? I am, I said. And for once, it was true. He walked over and sat beside me. You don't have to invite anyone you don't want there. I know, I said. That's the point. We didn't rush the planning. We didn't make announcements for attention. We moved quietly, intentionally. And when we finally sent out invitations, every detail mattered. RSVP deadlines, assigned seating, clear boundaries. Not to punish, to protect. Danielle received hers the same way everyone else did. No special note, no explanation, just an invitation. She called me the moment it arrived. I don't understand, she said. Why am I not listed as part of the wedding party? I kept my voice calm. Because you're not. Her silence crackled through the phone. I'm your sister. Yes, I said. And you're invited as a guest. She scoffed. This feels intentional. It is, I replied. I'm being intentional with my life. She lowered her voice. Are you trying to make a point? I paused, then I see the truth. I already made it. You just didn't listen. She hung up. I stared at my phone, not with regret, but with resolve. Because I wasn't excluding her. I was including her honestly. No special access. No hidden power. Just the same boundaries I'd been given. And somehow, that felt like the loudest statement I'd ever made. The backlash didn't come from my siblings first. It came from the one person who always asked me to be the bigger one. Be the bigger one. The call came from my mother that evening. I knew it would. She always appeared right after my siblings felt uncomfortable, like a pressure valve releasing at the point of least resistance. I let it ring twice before answering. Arielle, she said, skipping any greeting. What's going on with these invitations? I sat on the edge of my bed, phone pressed to my ear, staring at the wall where sunlight had faded into shadow. What do you mean? I asked. Danielle is upset, she said. She says you're being deliberately hurtful. I closed my eyes. Of course, that's how it sounded. Did she tell you I invited her? I asked. Yes, my mother replied, but not as a family, not properly. I exhaled slowly. She's invited the same way I was invited to her wedding. That's different, she snapped quickly. How? I asked. Silence. Then she said the sentence I had heard my whole life. Why can't you just be the bigger one? There it was, the familiar burden, placed gently but firmly back on my shoulders. I've been the bigger one, I said quietly, for years. You know what I mean, she said. This family has already been through so much. Why stir things up now? I laughed softly, not because it was funny, but because it was predictable. I didn't stir anything, I said. I stopped pretending it wasn't already stirred. She sighed. People are starting to ask questions. I straightened. About what? About why you weren't at the weddings. About why things feel tense. I felt something sharp and clean settle in my chest. Good, I said. She gasped softly. Arielle. No, I continued. Let them ask. Let them wonder. I'm done carrying the silence. You're punishing everyone, she said, her voice trembling. I shook my head, even though she couldn't see me. I am protecting myself. She lowered her voice. You don't understand what you're risking. I paused, then answered honestly. I understand exactly what I'm risking. I just decided I'm worth it." The line went quiet. When she finally spoke again, her voice was small. "Your father wouldn't want this," I swallowed. "Then he shouldn't have trusted me with the truth," I replied gently. The call ended without resolution. I lay back on my bed and stared at the ceiling, my heart pounding, not from fear but from relief. For the first time, I hadn't folded, and I knew what that meant. This wasn't over. It was escalating. The next day, someone unexpected reached out, and what they told me shifted the entire story. The truth from the other side. I wasn't expecting Tanya to call again. After everything she'd already risked by talking to me, I assumed she'd step back, protect her own peace. So when her name appeared on my screen the next afternoon, my heart skipped. "Hey," she said quietly when I answered. "Do you have a minute?" "For you, always," I replied. We didn't meet in public this time. She came over. She sat on my couch with her purse in her lap, posture stiff, like someone preparing to confess something that could change their life. "I need to tell you something," she said, "and I need you to hear it from me before it comes out another way." I nodded, bracing myself. She took a deep breath. "Marcus and Danielle didn't just think you were your father's favorite," she said. "They were afraid you were his contingency." I frowned. "What does that mean?" "It means," she said carefully, "that if anything ever went wrong, financially, legally, you were the one he trusted to step in." The room felt smaller suddenly. "They found out after he passed," she continued, "when the trust documents were reviewed." I stared at her. So every time they pushed me away, they were protecting their position, she finished. Not their feelings, not their pride, their control. Tanya's eyes filled with tears. "I didn't know any of this when I married into the family, I swear." "I believe you," I said. She reached into her bag and pulled out another folder, thicker than the last. "I copied these too," she whispered, "because if this goes where I think it's going, you'll need them." I opened it slowly. Emails, meeting notes, decisions made without me, about businesses, assets, future plans, all signed, all approved, all excluding my voice. "They never planned to bring you back in," Tanya said softly. "Not really. Weddings were just the cleanest way to keep you distant." I felt a strange calm wash over me, not rage, understanding. "Why tell me now?" I asked. She swallowed. "Because I don't want to raise children in a family built on erasure." That hit me harder than anything else. I closed the folder carefully. "Thank you," I said, "for choosing the truth." She nodded, tears slipping free. As she stood to leave, she hesitated at the door. "Whatever happens next," she said, "they're going to fight you." I met her gaze. "I know." After she left, I stood alone in my living room, the folder heavy in my hands. I finally understood why they'd worked so hard to keep me out. It wasn't personal, it was strategic. And now that I know, they couldn't control the ending anymore. With proof in my hands and my wedding approaching, I had one decision left: expose everything or wait and let them reveal themselves. Waiting is a strategy. 2, I didn't expose them right away. That surprised everyone, including me. The proof sat in a locked drawer in my bedroom. Emails, documents, timelines that explained years of exclusion better than any argument ever could. Every night I opened the drawer, looked at the folder, and closed it again. Because power isn't just about what you know, it's about when you decide to use it. Caleb noticed a shift in me before anyone else did. "You're quieter," he said one evening as we sat on the couch, wedding planning documents spread across the coffee table. "Am I?" I asked. He nodded. But not scared, focused. I smiled faintly. "I'm letting things play out." He studied me for a moment. "That can be dangerous." "So can rushing," I replied. We continued planning in peace. We finalized the guest list. We confirmed seating. We hired security, not flashy, not aggressive, just firm, Professional, clear, every rule was written down, every expectation spelled out, not to trap anyone, to remove ambiguity. Meanwhile, the family noise grew louder. My mother stopped calling every day and switched to text messages filled with concern, disguised as guilt. People are confused. This isn't like you. Your silence is hurting everyone. I didn't respond. Marcus tried a different approach. He sent a message pretending nothing was wrong. Heard you picked a great venue. Congrats. I stared at it for a long time, then typed back one word, thanks. Danielle, on the other hand, went quiet. That worried me more than the anger, because silence from her usually meant preparation. I heard through relatives that she was telling her version of the story, softened, polished, strategic, that I was holding grudges, that I was changing, that I was punishing the family. I let her. Because for the first time, I wasn't trying to correct the narrative. I was building something stronger. The closer the wedding got, the more I understood something important. They weren't afraid of me ruining the day. They were afraid of losing the image. And the thing about images, they crack under pressure. I opened the drawer one last time and took out the folder, not to expose it, but to be ready. 3 weeks before the wedding, Danielle made her move, and it wasn't subtle. The attempt to take control back. Danielle didn't call. She showed up. I was in the kitchen chopping vegetables when the doorbell rang. I checked the time, confused, then looked through the peephole. Her face filled the frame. Perfect makeup, a calm smile, tight eyes. I opened the door. "Hi," she said brightly, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. "Hi," I replied, closing the door behind her. She looked around my apartment like she was cataloging it, judging, measuring. "You look good," she said finally. "So do you," I replied. She sat at the table, folded her hands, and got straight to it. "We need to reset," she said. I leaned against the counter. "Reset what?" "The tension," she said smoothly. "This back and forth isn't healthy." I nodded. "I agree." Her eyes lit up slightly. "Good, then we're on the same page." "No," I continued. "We're just using the same words." Her smile tightened. "I don't know what you think you're doing," she said, "but you're making yourself look bad." I tilted my head. "To whom?" She waved her hand dismissively. "To the family. To people who matter." There it was, image again. "You should have come to me first," she said, "instead of lawyers, instead of all this." I laughed softly. "You mean like I came to you before the weddings?" Her jaw clenched. That was different. "How?" I asked. She stood abruptly. "You're enjoying this." I stayed calm. "I'm enjoying clarity." She leaned across the table. "If you keep pushing, I can make this very uncomfortable for you." The threat was quiet, controlled. I met her eyes. "You already did." She froze. I stepped closer. "You excluded me from milestones. You controlled narratives. You decided who I was allowed to be in this family." Her voice dropped. "You don't know everything." I smiled. "I know enough." That scared her. I could see it in the way her confidence cracked, just slightly. She straightened her jacket. "Fine," she said. "Do what you want." She walked to the door, then turned back. "Just remember," she added, "families don't forget." I watched her leave, and for the first time I didn't feel threatened, because I finally understood something she didn't. Families don't forget, but records don't lie. 2 days later, my wedding venue called with bad news, and I immediately knew who was behind it. The call I was waiting for. The call came on a Tuesday morning. I was in the middle of answering emails when my phone lit up with the venue's number. For a split second I smiled, thinking it was a final confirmation. It wasn't. "Hi, Arielle," the coordinator said, her voice tight. "I'm calling about your reservation." My stomach dropped. "Yes," I said carefully. "There's been a complication." That word again. I leaned back in my chair and closed my eyes. "Go on." She hesitated. We've received notice of a prior claim on the date. Another party says they booked first. I didn't ask who. I already knew. That's strange, I said calmly. I have the signed contract, deposit paid, confirmation emails. I know, she said quickly. And we are reviewing that. But until it's resolved, we may have to release the date. Release the date. 3 weeks before my wedding, I thanked her, hung up, and sat in silence. I didn't panic. That surprised me most of all, because some part of me had been expecting this. I pulled out my phone and scrolled to Danielle's contact. I didn't call her. Instead, I checked my email. And there he was. A forwarded message from the venue sent earlier that morning requesting verification of authorization changes. The sender? Danielle. She hadn't even tried to hide it. She'd gone straight to the source, using family familiarity and polite authority to muddy the waters just enough to cause doubt. I felt something sharp settle in my chest. Not fear, resolve. I called Caleb. They are trying to cancel the venue, I said. There was a pause. Do we have backups? Yes, I replied. And we have documentation. Then what do you want to do? I smiled faintly. Upgrade. Within hours, I activated Plan B, actually Plan A. A smaller, more exclusive venue I'd originally dismissed as too much. Better security, cleaner contracts, zero family connections. By that evening, everything was transferred. The new venue didn't blink. They confirmed in writing twice. I forwarded the confirmation to my lawyer. Then I did something I hadn't done in weeks. I texted my mother. The venue is secured. Please let everyone know the location has changed. She replied almost immediately. Why wasn't this discussed first? I stared at the message, then typed back, because discussions were used against me. I put my phone down. The next message came from Marcus. You're being extreme. I didn't answer, because extremes would have been panicking. Extreme would have been begging. What I did was simply adjust, and that scared them more than anything else. The venue change forced everyone to show their hand, and that's when I saw who was really on my side. Who shows up when control is gone. The reaction to the venue change was immediate, not loud, telling. Relatives started calling, not to congratulate me, but to ask questions. Why the sudden switch? Is everything okay? Is there family drama we should know about? I answered politely. Briefly, I didn't explain. Because explanations invite arguments, facts don't. Some people accepted that, others didn't. My aunt called to say she might not be able to attend anymore. A cousin texted that the new venue felt less accessible. Less accessible to who? I noticed something interesting. The people who genuinely wanted to celebrate us found a way. The people who wanted influence found excuses. Caleb noticed it too. Your guest list is shrinking, he said one evening. I nodded. It's clarifying. Then something unexpected happened. Tanya called. I heard about the venue, she said. I just wanted you to know we'll be there. We, her, and Marcus. I paused. Is Marcus aware? She exhaled. He is now. I didn't respond. She continued. He's not happy, but he knows this crossed a line. That mattered more than an apology. Later that night, my mother came over unannounced. She stood in my doorway, eyes tired, posture unsure, like she didn't know which role to play anymore. I don't recognize this family, she said quietly. I gestured for her to come in. Neither do I. She sat on the couch and stared at her hands. Daniel said you're punishing everyone, she said. I sat across from her. Daniel says a lot of things. She looked up. Are you? I shook my head. I'm hosting a wedding. Anyone who wants to come can come. Anyone who doesn't, won't. That's simple? Yes. She studied me for a long moment. Then she said something I hadn't expected. You seem different. I smiled faintly. I am. She nodded slowly. Stronger? No, I corrected gently. Clearer. She stood to leave a few minutes later. At the door she paused. Your father would have respected this version of you. That landed softly, but deeply. After she left, I stood alone in my apartment, looking at the updated seating chart. Names removed, space opening, peace expanding, and for the first time, I felt something I hadn't felt since this began. Excitement, because now the wedding wasn't about managing other people's emotions. It was about celebrating our life, and no one could take that from me. On the morning of the wedding, the final confrontation didn't happen inside the venue, but at the door. The door decides everything. The morning of the wedding arrived quietly. No chaos, no panic, just sunlight spilling through the hotel curtains and the steady calm of knowing I'd already survived the worst parts. Caleb squeezed my hand as we rode to the venue together. Whatever happens today, he said, this is ours. I nodded. That's why it can't be taken. The venue looked even better than I remembered. Clean lines, warm lighting, private entrance. Security was already in place, dressed simply, professional, alert. They nodded at me as I walked in, not as a family, as authority. I didn't see Marcus or Danielle right away. That was intentional. Guests arrived slowly, smiles, hugs, laughter that felt real, not staged. People checked in at the entrance, names verified, seating cards handed out. No confusion, no drama. Then I heard raised voices outside, not shouting, arguing, controlled but tense. I glanced toward the door. Marcus stood just outside the entrance with two people I didn't recognize. His jaw was tight, his posture rigid. Security looked at me. I nodded and walked over. What's the issue? I asked calmly. Marcus turned sharply. They're with me. They are not on the list, the guard said professionally. Marcus scoffed. I'm the bride's brother. I met his eyes. And they're still not on the list. He stared at me like he couldn't believe I was doing this, like the reality of it hadn't settled yet. You're really going through with this, he said quietly. I already did, I replied. Danielle arrived then, heels clicking fast, eyes scanning the scene. What's happening? She demanded. I didn't answer her. I turned to Marcus. You're welcome to come in. They're not. Danielle's face flushed. This is embarrassing. Yes, I said evenly. It is. For a moment, no one moved. Then Marcus made a choice. He turned to his friends and said, I'll catch up with you later. They left, annoyed but silent. Marcus walked inside. Danielle hesitated. She looked at me, searching for something. Guilt, apology, hesitation. She didn't find it. She stepped inside too. And just like that, the door closed. Not loudly, not dramatically, firmly. I stood there for a moment longer, breathing steadily. This wasn't revenge. This was a balance. For the first time, the rules applied evenly, and the word didn't end. The ceremony brought peace, but the reception brought truth. What couldn't be unsaid? The ceremony was beautiful, not because of the flowers or the music, but because it felt honest. When I walked down the aisle, I didn't scan the crowd for approval. I didn't search for reassurance. I focused on Caleb, on the life we were choosing. The vows were simple, clear. We promised the truth, partnership, respect. When the applause came, it felt earned. At the reception, the mood softened. People laughed freely, conversations flowed. For a while, it felt like the storm had finally passed. Then Danielle cornered me near the bar. You made your point, she said, forcing a smile. Can we stop pretending this isn't punishment? I sipped my water calmly. I'm not pretending anything. She lowered her voice. You humiliated us. I met her eyes. You trained me. Her smile dropped. Marcus joined us, tension written across his face. You didn't have to do it like this, he said. I nodded. You're right. They waited. I could have done it worse. Danielle's breath hitched. You enjoy this. No, I replied softly. I enjoy peace. Marcus rubbed his face. So what now? I considered him for a long moment. Now, I said, we stop lying. Danielle scoffed. About what? About me, I said. About why I wasn't invited. About the trust. About the choices you made. Her eyes widened slightly. You don't know everything, she said. I know enough, I replied. People nearby quieted, sensing the tension. The consequences arrive. Quietly. The weeks after the wedding were strangely calm. No explosions. No dramatic apologies. No family meeting. Just distance. The group chat went quiet like someone turned the volume down on purpose. People posted less. When they did, it was safe things, birthdays, church announcements, a cousin's new job. Nothing that required honesty, and for the first time in my life, I didn't chase the silence. I let it be. Caleb and I slipped into married life the way you slip into warm water, slowly, naturally, without needing permission. Mornings felt softer, evenings felt lighter. I started sleeping through the night again. Then the first crack showed. A call from my aunt. Not my mother, not Marcus, not Danielle. My aunt. Arielle, she said, trying to sound casual. I heard there might be some legal stuff happening. I leaned back on my couch, eyes on the ceiling. Who told you that? I asked. She hesitated. People talk. I exhaled. What did you hear? That your father's trust is being reviewed. Reviewed. That word meant someone was nervous. I thanked her, ended the call and sat quietly for a long moment. Then I opened the drawer where I kept the folder and pulled it out. The documents didn't look dramatic, but they felt heavier now, like they were gaining weight as time passed. Caleb walked in and saw it in my hands. Is it starting? He asked. I nodded. I think so. He sat beside me. What do you want to do? I thought about the wedding, how I chose peace, how I didn't expose them publicly, how I offered a path forward without humiliation. And I thought about what they did with that mercy. They didn't heal. They hid. I want accountability, I said softly, not revenge. That afternoon I called Thomas Reynolds and scheduled a formal meeting. Not a confrontation, a process. When the day came, I sat across from the lawyer with my notes in a neat folder. Caleb sat beside me, steady, present. Thomas didn't look surprised. I suspected you'd come in, he said gently. It's been building. I slid Tanya's documents across the table. He examined them carefully, then looked up. These are significant, he said. I know, I replied. He leaned back. If we proceed, it can't stay quiet forever. Not if your siblings resist. Will they? Caleb asked. Thomas didn't answer immediately. Then he said, people rarely surrender control without a fight. 2 days later, the fight began. I got a text from Marcus. Why are you doing this? I stared at the message, then typed back, why did you? He didn't respond. Danielle tried a different approach. She sent a long paragraph about family, forgiveness, how I was dragging up the past, how my father wouldn't want conflict. I didn't reply to the emotional bait. Instead, I forwarded her message to my lawyer. Because I wasn't debating anymore, I was documenting. That night my mother called. Her voice sounded smaller than I'd ever heard it. Arielle, she whispered, please, don't do this. I closed my eyes. I already did it, I said softly. I just didn't name it. What do you want? She asked, crying. I answered with the simplest truth I had. I want them to stop acting like I'm the problem for noticing what they did. Silence. Then she said, barely audible, they're scared. I opened my eyes. Good, I said gently. Maybe fear will teach them what my pain couldn't. The next letter didn't come from my family. It came from a financial institution, and it confirmed what they'd been hiding all along. The paper trail doesn't care who you are. The letter arrived in an unmarked envelope. No return address in bold, no dramatic stamp, just a clean, professional seal. I almost tossed it aside with the other mail until I saw the institution name, a bank I didn't use. My stomach tightened. I opened it carefully. It was formal language, the kind designed to sound neutral even when it's delivering something explosive. It referenced the trust. It referenced an account, and it referenced unusual activity requiring verification by all named beneficiaries. All named beneficiaries. My hands went cold. This wasn't a rumor anymore. This wasn't Tanya's folder. This was the system noticing what the family tried to hide. I called Thomas immediately. He answered quickly, like he'd been expecting it. "You received it," he said. "Yes," I replied. "What does it mean?" "It means," he said calmly, "the trust is being flagged. Certain actions require consent or explanation." I exhaled slowly, my heartbeat steady but heavy. "So they can't just move quietly anymore?" "No," Thomas said, "not without risk." That afternoon, Marcus showed up at my apartment. Not a call, not a text. He came in person. When I opened the door, he looked tired. Not guilty, tired. Like a man who had been carrying a secret and finally felt the weight shifting. "We need to talk," he said. I stepped aside and let him in. We stood in my living room like he didn't know where to put his hands. Like the walls themselves were judging him. "I didn't want it to go like this," he said. I nodded. "But it did." He swallowed. "You don't understand how complicated it was after Dad died." I stared at him. "You mean how convenient it was?" I replied. His jaw tightened. "Arielle." "No," I cut in gently. "Don't say my name like it's a warning." He looked down. "We thought you'd overreact." I laughed softly. "You locked me out of weddings," I said, "and I didn't overreact. You just didn't want me present enough to react at all." He flinched. That was the first real sign of truth landing. He tried again. "We were trying to protect the family." I stepped closer. "Protect who?" I asked quietly. He didn't answer, because we both knew. He looked up at me, eyes finally honest. "Danielle said you'd take everything," he admitted. "That you'd ruin us." I felt my throat tighten, not because of fear, because of betrayal. "So you ruined me first," I said. Silence swallowed the room. Marcus's shoulders sagged. "What do you want?" I took a deep breath. "I want accountability," I said. "I want acknowledgement, and I want you to stop treating my boundaries like an attack." He nodded slowly, like he was realizing the truth had a price. Then his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, face tightening. "Danielle," he muttered. He looked at me again. "She's not taking this well." I held his gaze. "I know," I said softly, because Danielle didn't fear losing money. She feared losing the narrative, and people like that don't surrender quietly. The apology Marcus offered wasn't the real turning point. The real turning point was what Danielle did next to save herself. The last attempt to control the story. Danielle didn't call me. She didn't text. She went public. I found out the same way everyone else did, through whispers that reached my phone before facts ever could. A cousin messaged first. "Is it true you're suing your own family?" I stared at the screen, my jaw tightening. Another message followed seconds later. "Danielle says you're trying to destroy them financially." There it was, the final move. I sat back on my couch and let out a slow breath. This was always how Danielle played things. When control slipped privately, she grabbed it publicly. If she couldn't manage the truth, she reshaped it. I opened social media. She hadn't named me directly. She didn't have to. Her post was vague, emotional, and carefully written. "It's heartbreaking when people you love choose money over family. Some people will never be satisfied. Praying for peace in this difficult season." The comments flooded in. Support, sympathy, agreement. People praised her strength, her grace, her patience. I closed the app. I didn't respond, because responding emotionally was what she wanted. Instead, I called Thomas. "She's escalating," I said calmly. He sighed. I suspected she would. "What do we do?" I asked. "We proceed," he replied. "Quietly, correctly." That night Marcus called again, not angry this time, scared. "She's spiraling," he said, "posting things, calling relatives, saying you're attacking her." I leaned against the counter and looked out the window. "She's protecting herself." At your expense, he said quietly. Yes, I replied, just like always. He swallowed. I told her to stop. And did she listen? I asked. No. I nodded. Then this is bigger than you now. The next morning, I received a formal notice. Danielle had attempted to move funds again. Blocked, flagged, documented. The system didn't care about her posts. It didn't care about family loyalty. It cared about authorization, and she didn't have it anymore. By afternoon, the tone shifted. The same relatives who'd whispered suddenly went quiet. A few reached out privately. I didn't know the full story. Things make more sense now. I hope you're okay. I didn't gloat. I didn't correct anyone. I just stayed steady. That evening, Danielle finally called. Her voice cracked the moment I answered. You didn't have to let it go this far, she said. I stayed quiet. You could have talked to me, she continued. You embarrassed me. I closed my eyes. You embarrassed yourself, I said gently. I just stopped covering for you. She started crying, real tears this time. I was afraid, she whispered. I know, I said. Afraid of losing control, she admitted. I didn't respond. After a moment, she asked, What happens now? I answered honestly. Now, the truth finishes what I started. The line went quiet. And for the first time, I knew this wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about release. What came next wasn't loud, public justice, but something far more permanent. Freedom looks like this. The final resolution didn't happen in the courtroom. There were no raised voices, no dramatic confrontations, just signatures, documents, acknowledgement. Marcus agreed to mediation. Danielle resisted at first, then complied when resistance became impossible. The trust was restructured, oversight added, transparency enforced. No one went to jail, no one was ruined. But no one was untouchable anymore, and that mattered. The apology Marcus gave me weeks later was quiet, unpolished, real. I should have stood up for you, he said. I didn't. I nodded. I know. Danielle's apology came later. It wasn't perfect, but it was honest. I treated you like a threat instead of a sister, she admitted. I listened. That was enough. Forgiveness didn't come instantly, but resentment didn't stay either. Caleb and I hosted a small dinner months later. Not a family reunion, a gathering, friends, chosen family, Tanya and her parents, a few relatives who'd shown up without conditions. Laughter filled the room easily, no tension, no pretending. At one point I stepped outside onto the balcony and looked out at the city lights. Caleb joined me. You okay? He asked. I smiled. I am. He squeezed my hand. You know you didn't give them a taste of their own medicine. I looked at him. I didn't? I asked. No, he said. You gave yourself what they never did. I thought about that, about the weddings I stood outside of, the doors closed, the silence, and the moment I stopped knocking. I didn't exclude my siblings from hurting them, I excluded dysfunction from my life, and in doing so, I finally included myself. The last time I saw a wedding photo from my family, I didn't feel pain. I felt distant, healthy distance, and peace, because the greatest revenge wasn't denying them access. It was no longer needed. The end.